everyone, welcome to Small Biz Tips. I am here today, guys. I met this young lady at a mastermind in Miami. She blew my mind. She was so knowledgeable. She's always killing it online. I had to bring her to y'all. Guys, meet my good friend Jacqueline. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm excited to be here, Joubert. I had a great time meeting you in Miami and following your story and how you help people. So I would love to come on this show, share some positive energy with everybody, and maybe a few financial tips.
Awesome. I can't wait. I know you're going to kill it. So, wait, before we even jump into financial tips and all that, who is Jacqueline? Tell us about you. How did you come up? Where you from? All that good stuff.
Where am I from? I'm from the West Coast, actually. So I
Mm,
grew up in Northern California on a 1,000-acre ranch.
wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty
So
cool.
it's different. It's definitely different. So, when you go to a party and people are like, tell us an interesting fact about you. And I'm like, well, I raised a sheep for 4-H one year.
Wait, hold on. 1,000 acre ranch. How was that? Like, was it like, were you like farming everything? Give me the details. I'm curious to see how was that back then.
It was super, super country. Like the
Mm.
closest Walmart, so the closest grocery store is like 20 minutes away. The closest Walmart was like 35, 40 minutes away.
Oh my God.
So it was like, yeah, you're really out in the sticks, girl. Like for real, for real. So it was actually property that had been passed down from generation to generation, right? And so it had
Mm.
landed on my mom. So my
Congrats.
mom lived on the property, and her sister, right? And their dad, my grandfather.
Yeah.
So, long story short, the property gets sold out from under us, and my grandfather passes at the same time. And so, my mom
Wow.
inherits $1.4 million because those of you who are listening may not know I live in Atlanta, Georgia now. So,
Yeah.
the same way that I got to Georgia is the same way that I got into financial planning. And that's because my mom inherited all of that money and she lost
Mm-hmm.
all of that money within about 4 years. So,
Wow.
that's what led me to become a certified financial planner.
Oh my God. So hold on. Before we even go to your story, my condolences to the family and your grandpa passing away. Um, 1.4 million in 4 years. What happened? Like she was, she just kind of started buying stuff or paying debt. Like how did you lost all that money?
You're like, bridge the gap. It's not making sense. It's a lot of money in
Yeah.
4 years. So my mom, I was raised single mom, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people may not understand like what it is to be land rich, right? That means on paper you have money, but if you don't utilize that property to really make you an income, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have a high income skill set where you're out making a lot of money, then you live a very poor life. So grew up very
Mm.
poor. My mom was a single mom with 3 kids, really just trying to make ends meet. So she got her money and she tried to do the right thing, right? And
Yeah.
by trying to do the right thing, she went and hired a financial advisor. You
Okay.
can't make so for those of you listening, you can't see my air quotes, right? Financial advisor. And so this advisor was like, "Oh, let me take this one goal that your mom has, which was 529s for her kids to go to college,
Mm-hmm.
and let me put all of her money in there." So when he put
I
all of her
see.
money in there, when he put all of her money in
Wow.
there, not only was she subject to a ton of penalties and fees when she wanted to pull the money out, but on top of that, there was a bunch of fees related to the account investment types, right? So
Wow.
what I didn't understand was when we had lost the money, I was like, wait, mom, I'm confused because we went from me growing up literally having like one pair of shoes to me
Yeah.
getting my first designer bag and matching shoes to having nothing again. And I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't think this is normal, right? Because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
teenager, so I'm trying to make sense of it. I said, I don't think this is normal. My mother couldn't explain it to me.
Mm.
So I was like, there has to be somebody out here who knows what this is, how to explain it, right? And shout out to Google University. I came across the certified financial planner designation. And I was like, okay, that's what I need to do. Because I need to be a person who knows not just about investments, but also
Yeah.
about all of these other pieces that are intertwined in your financial life, right? How to budget, how to plan for retirement, what the heck
Yes.
is estate planning, what is a trust, what are capital gains tax, right? So I was
Ooh.
like, you know what? I can't really find anybody to do this for me or to have a conversation with. So I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
become that person.
I love it. I love how you took a challenge and you overcome it by becoming the right person to answer these questions that you had, right? A lot of us don't think like that. I think that that's pretty amazing that you're able to do that, which takes me to you now, right? Because you said Google University, but you also went to school to learn this stuff. So tell us more
Mhm.
about that, about how did you go from now California to Atlanta? And when
Mhm.
you got to Atlanta, what was that process to say, okay, I'm going to zoom in on that? And then I want you to start telling us some of those games because there's so much our audience need to know about that space.
Yeah, it's a good question. When I moved here, I didn't actually move to Atlanta, Georgia. I moved to
Mm,
almost Tennessee borderline.
okay.
So I was about an hour and a half, 2 hours outside of Atlanta. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like just the country, it's the sticks out there, in my opinion. There's a Walmart in the town that I grew up in, but I don't think that makes it a city by any stretch of the imagination. And so what happens, in a lot of rural parts of the country is that there's just not a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a huge economy there that's booming. There's not a whole lot of jobs. And so I was like, I don't think this is going to work for me. I was like, I think I want more than this, right? And
Okay.
nothing wrong with living in a rural area, but we all know that there's more opportunities in the city.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I'm gonna go to college. So I explained my story as very like A to Z. There
Mm,
was this problem that I figured out, and then Z, here I am. It's like 12 years later, and I have it all figured out, and it's been perfect. And so when you start to ask about some of the nuances, I'm like, yeah, I went through a lot. Like, people don't think about what kind of mental health issues come along with losing your
yeah.
entire inheritance, right?
Yeah.
Over $1 million. People don't
Like
talk about that.
this.
They don't think about it, right? So not only am I watching my family struggle, I'm watching because it didn't just happen to my mom, it happened to her
Mm-hmm.
sister as well. So similar things were replicated with her side of the family. So I'm watching these struggles, right? And I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
make sense of all of these things. And so I'm having my own internal struggles at the same time. So people are like,
Wow.
well, what happened? You went to college for this, right? And I'm like, well, yes and no. When I hopped into college, this wasn't my focus at all. Like,
Okay.
my focus was not financial planning. When I was the end of my freshman year was just a disaster, an absolute disaster. And I was like, okay, I have to fix this because if I don't fix it, nobody's gonna fix it and it's
Mm-hmm.
just gonna be a mess. So at being 18 years old, I was like, okay, at the end of my freshman year, I was like, I have to take responsibility for this. And so that's when I started to venture into personal finance and I started to ask more of the questions of like, okay, what happened in these last few years?
Yeah.
What's going on? And so that's when I ventured into finding the CFP, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was just a very fortunate line of events that happened that led me to be here. And I can't express to you guys enough what the understanding of financial freedom and having that really does for your family, like
Let,
really does for your mental wealth, right?
I'm curious, right? You said something here. 18, something snapped, and you're like, listen, I need to figure this out, right? Although you have all these other things in your mind subconsciously, everything that you saw, everything that you experienced, and now you mentioned financial freedom, which is a golden expression that we hear all the time. What does financial freedom mean to you?
It's a really good question. And I was sharing this with my inner circle yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I had talked them through the four stages of wealth, right? And the very first phase of
Yeah.
wealth is stability. And so when we think of stability, what do you think of in terms of financial stability? I'll just ask you.
Yeah,
What do you
it's
think?
more to me, it's like your bills are being paid on time. You're able to put food on the table from like the mortgage to the water bill to being paying everything's being paid on time. Credit card, everything. So now you feel stable or comfortable, right?
Yes.
Like you
Yes.
have income coming in. It could be active income actually coming in. So that's what that means to me.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great definition. And that's the base definition that I use for most people, right?
Hmm.
But what's the difference between most people and you? Well, most people are not you. You are you, right?
Mm,
So I am me. So what does financial stability mean to me? And for me, it meant all of those things, right?
yeah.
But it also meant I had to own my home. because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's definition of personal finance and financial stability is different. So even though I was good on everything that you had said previously, I knew
Yeah.
like I didn't own my home at that point. And so because I didn't own my home, I was like, I still didn't feel stable, right? I didn't like
Mm.
that somebody could come in and tell me that they were selling the house at any point and I needed to leave in 6 months. Somebody could come in and say, oh, you need to pay more rent money. Somebody could come in and
Mm.
say, oh, we're tacking on a new fee, right? That
Yeah.
wasn't financial stability to me. I still didn't feel stable. And that's not the case for everybody, right? But
Yeah.
it's determining what that means for you. And so I talk people through these different phases of wealth so that we can understand, okay, this is how this should work chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
That way everything is moving in the most efficient direction, because you have people who are like, oh, I read this thing about wealthy people participate in infinite banking, so I need to do that. And I'm like, you make $45,000 a year and you have two children and a wife that you're trying to take care of, you're not ready for infinite banking yet. You need to
Mm.
work through these phases of wealth. Like you need to work through the stability
Uh,
phase.
wait. Hold on. You said the four phases of wealth. Tell us
Yes.
about that. You mentioned phase one, stability. What's phase two?
Yes, so think about it. Just think about it. And I like to enhance people's perspective of money, is what I say. Okay.
Okay.
So think about it like through these phases, right? I think people need an aerial view of wealth management to understand how these things work. So
Mm-hmm.
think about it. You have your first phase, which is stability. Like you literally just have to be stable, right? And
Yeah.
your final phase is actually financial freedom. So
Okay.
in the middle of that, you have stability, you have security,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have just your opportunities, right? And then you have your freedom. So you work
Okay.
from the stability phase and you work into the security phase, right? That's when you start to secure new assets, right? You're starting to
Gotcha.
be able to save money. And then you're moving into the next phase, which is the opportunities, where you're able to
Invest.
actually invest money. And that's when you start
Ah.
enjoying vacations, right?
God. Oh, hold on. Wait. Go
After.
back. Say that again. Say that again. Because we all
You
take vacations from like that first stage. Explain
Yeah,
it.
you haven't checked off that first phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that first phase, and what I teach people is that first phase doesn't mean that you have to be Dave Ramsey debt free,
Yeah.
right? You have to figure out what that financial stability piece means to you, because too often I'm talking to people who
Mm-hmm.
are taking these romantic vacations and I'm like, how are you doing that? How much did that cost? And they're spending
Mm.
$6,000 on a vacation, but then they come home and they are overwhelmed with
Yeah. That.
depression and FOMO because
Yeah.
they haven't taken care of the stability phase and the debt that they have at home. So now debt collectors hitting them up. They don't like it. They're uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to work through these phases. And so I tell people, like, I didn't have an aerial view of this. Nobody told me this, but I just naturally started to work through the phases. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, I don't think that I'm supposed to take big, lavish vacations before, and this was my rule, before
Yeah.
I own property. So I forced
Okay.
myself to buy property before I took any real vacations, before I bought
Wow.
any designer items, before I bought a luxury car. Like I did all of those things first.
Wow.
So
That
you
requires
have to work through
discipline.
these phases. A lot of discipline, and I'm glad you bring that up. So even for business owners, because we're talking about business tips here, right?
Yeah.
Like I tell people there's only two reasons to have a budget. And the first
Mm.
one you already told us, it's financial discipline. Because everybody gets scared of the word budget and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm the budget, I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to do anything. And I'm like, that's not the case at all. You have a budget, one, to build your financial discipline, because
Mm-hmm.
your life is never going to feel like it's under control if you do not have financial discipline. If you do not
Mm.
understand your money and you do not feel comfortable with managing what you have, your life will never feel like it's under control. So the first step in having a budget, the first reason to have a budget is
Yeah.
to build financial discipline. The second
Wow.
reason to have a budget is, you want to take a stab at it? I love when people
Tell
take a
us. I'm
stab at
like you're just dropping gems. I'm like I'm just absorbing all this. This is awesome.
it.
So
You're like,
you
don't put me on the spot.
nah, just tell
Um,
us.
So the second reason, and the only reason why you need to have a budget, is to determine how much money you have to invest. That's it.
Mm.
Because in order for you to move through these phases of wealth, you have
Yeah.
to have money to invest. You have to have money to
100%.
invest.
So I want to make sure this is clear for any business owners, no matter where you are in the ladder right now, right? So you have phase one, which is stability. That means you're able to pay your bills, you're able to take care of your family. Then you have security. This is where you're able to put savings aside, right? Savings for emergency purposes, like the Dave Ramsey will say you need to have at least $1,000 in saving minimum. So you would say, I guess, 3, 6 month, or even 12 month of savings set up if anything would happen. Then the next stage after that is the opportunity. Now you had saving emergency. Now you got to start saving for investments. Maybe real estate, or like, some other businesses and so forth that you're trying to do. Then once you have that, I'm assuming that's when you could create that freedom because now you have assets working for you. Am I
Yep,
correct?
exactly. Exactly. Now you have assets working for you. That's how it's
Mm,
supposed to work. Your assets are supposed to pay for your liabilities, right? And what are your
mm-hmm.
liabilities? In this day and age, thanks to social media, it's the vacations, right?
Yep.
The vacations are a huge piece of what you are portraying to the world as like, this is my wealth. This is how I spend my wealth. I spend my wealth traveling,
Mm,
right? So before you take the lavish vacations, before you buy the designer items, before you buy the fancy car, you
mhm.
have to have some assets that are paying for those liabilities. It only makes sense. And it honestly moves you through these 4 phases a lot smoother. And I tell people, especially my retired clients, right? Because
Mhm.
over my 8 years of doing this, most of my clients, probably I would guess like maybe 87% of my client base has been age 50 and up and
Mhm.
has over like $5 million of assets, right?
Yeah,
So the conversations I have with them are different. And so the
definitely.
conversations I have with them later is a lot about regretting, like, oh, I should have worked through these 4 phases this way. I'm glad that something worked out for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now. But those conversations that I have with them are very different. And so, to a certain extent, I'm like, well, I can almost kind of see into the future because I know what your future is going to
Yeah,
look like if you don't do X, Y, and Z, or if you do overspend, right? And
yeah.
the conversation I'm having with them at retirement is one of them being like, well, I wish that I had the opportunity to do more. That's always
Mm.
their biggest regret. Nobody regrets over saving, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
ever does.
That's huge. Wow, you put it so clearly, right? Those 4 phases. No one has ever explained it this way to me. All right. Now I'm looking at it. I'm like, wait, what part of the phase? What phase I'm in right now? And I think that's important for all of us, business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever. It's important to know one what phase you in, and you mentioned something about seeing your future, right? And you said wish you could do more. Well, the best time to do more is now. So how are you walking through this? I think this is amazing. Now you mentioned you working with your clients that has 5 million net worth and up. Tell us more about how you work with these clients, and also how you work with clients that are maybe younger than that probably not in that stage yet, or do you even do that?
Yeah. So, what do you want to know about working with 50 and up people?
Well, tell when they say they want to do more, right, at a high net
Mhm.
worth. Tell us more about their mindset. Where's their mind now? Now they have that quote unquote freedom, where their assets is paying for everything. What are they thinking about now?
So there's two pieces of the conversation, right? And this is something I
Hmm.
share with all of my clients. I share that there is always a qualitative answer and there is
Mm,
always a quantitative answer, right? So there is always a number response to
okay.
your question or thought that would be best for you, right?
Mm,
But there is also the qualitative piece. Like we cannot ignore our thoughts, our emotions, how we feel
yeah.
about things, right? So when I'm talking to them and I'm talking about things that they wish they would have done earlier, it's always to have invested consistently. They always wish
Mm,
that they would have consistently invested early and often.
okay.
Always. No matter what, like everyone always says that they're like, yeah, I might have taken like a little break here or I kind of laid off here and I kind of wish that I had kept that up, right?
That
So for
consistency.
entrepreneurs, yeah, so for entrepreneurs who don't have big booming businesses or they have a side hustle and they're looking to get into it, this is the information that I always give them. I say, look, we need to determine what your financial freedom number is. So we
Mm.
need to figure out how much money you want to have saved. So let's say that, and this is not the sexy part, right? But
Yeah.
let's say that Joubert, you want to retire. Let's just call it 67, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
where the United States pictures you retiring is age 67. You're gonna get a social security check and you'll be good to go, right? So let's just say I know you're an amazing entrepreneur. You help
Yeah.
people and you're getting ready to help my business, right? Take it to the moon. But let's just say you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to retire at 67. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is risky, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is let's figure out what your financial freedom number is. Let's say your financial freedom number is 1.5 million. All right, so let's take your age. Let's take how much you need to save on a monthly basis to get you to 1.5 million at 67 years old. What does
Gotcha.
that mean? The number is probably really small, right? Like
Very.
depending on your age, yeah, it's under like $1,500 a month.
Mm.
Okay, just depending on your age.
Yeah.
If you're in your 20s, the number is like $500 a month ish, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is let's figure out what that number is and let's make a promise to ourselves that we're going to put that money up every single month. Because then
Mm.
what happens is you get to 67 and you have $1.5 million saved, assuming you didn't touch anything, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's amazing about that is that any other money that you made throughout that time, you can reinvest into your business, right? You can
Yeah.
reinvest into your business, you can spend it, you can do whatever you want to do with it because that's the reality of it. I don't care what you really do with your money. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
trying to help you build that financial discipline. I'm trying to help you figure out how much money you have to invest. And I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to help you be consistent about investing. That way, when you get to 65, 67, and none of your business ideas worked out, right? It was all a
Mm-hmm.
struggle for you. You still have $1.5 million saved just
Mm-hmm.
because you invested consistently and often these small pieces to get you to that big goal. So
Wow.
that's what I encourage entrepreneurs to do. And that's what I encourage entrepreneurs to look at when they are starting this journey and they don't have a 401k option.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have anybody forcing them to save because
Yeah.
I've had a lot of clients successfully retire at 60, 65 because they consistently invested in their 401k over time. They didn't do
Mm-hmm.
anything else, right? They
Yeah.
didn't pick up a whole bunch of debt, but they just consistently invested in their 401k. They come to me as a client and I'm saying, well, you actually can invest. I know you had no idea of where you were, but you actually
Mm.
can invest comfortably and it's going to work out just fine for you. So you don't have to try to run through the ranks. You don't have to run
Yeah.
through the phases that quickly, but you can, is what I'm saying. You have the opportunity to do so. But it just depends on how much you want to push yourself, how much you want to push this system that is in
Yeah.
front of you.
Wow. Wow. You just lay it out the whole, you map it out. Wow, this is amazing. I want to take the conversation a little bit further, right? You mentioned something earlier about trust, will, estate planning. Um, when should any entrepreneurs or business owners start thinking about these things? And can you go a little bit detail into them? What are those and why we should start thinking about them now and how we should start thinking about putting them together?
Good question. So, what you're referring to is what we call estate planning documents.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone at the age of 18 should have estate planning documents in place because what happens when you turn 18? You grown. You grown. It's time to get out the house. It's time to do, things that adults do, right?
Yeah.
I.e., paying bills, adulting. Okay. But think about it like this. At 18, you're really still a child. So, as a parent, you need to make sure that your children are starting this estate planning process. Okay.
Okay.
And you want to make sure that you've done it for yourself. Now, what this means is we want to cover you in case
Mm-hmm.
you are incapacitated or you pass away, right? So
Mm-hmm.
incapacitated meaning you can no longer care for yourself, right? So you get
Gotcha.
into a random car accident, something happens and you just cannot make decisions on your behalf.
Yeah.
Now, when you cannot make decisions on your behalf because you're incapacitated or you're deceased, you need these
Mm-hmm.
documents to help guide your loved ones to know what to do when you cannot make decisions for yourself. So think about it like this. When you cannot make decisions for yourself, there's
Mm-hmm.
two really main decisions that need to be made for you. What are those decisions, you may ask? The first decision is a financial decision. Somebody has to make financial decisions for you when you
Yeah.
cannot make decisions for yourself, right? And that's what happens with minors. That's why
Yeah.
at the age of 18, you need to implement these documents that I'm telling you about. So, one
Wow.
is for the financial decisions that you can't make, one is for the health decisions that you can't make, right? This is the
Mm-hmm.
question of, and it's a little harsh, but do we pull the plug or not? That's where this question comes
Mm.
into play, and that's where your estate documents take over. So you, for those who are listening, you're gonna want to do a little bit more research on these four documents. All right. The first one being a will. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
the will is what tells you the same thing I was just telling you guys before. The will is just a written document. And I know it's scary, right? Like it seems
Yeah,
really
but it's important to talk about it, and we don't talk about it enough. So
we
let's
don't. We
go.
don't.
Let's go. I want to hear
So they're
it.
just documents, guys. These are
Hmm.
just titles for literally, I don't have a piece of, here's a piece of paper. For just a piece of paper that says what things need to be done, right? And we
Yeah.
consider this to be legally binding. So that happens with the will.
Hmm.
That happens with the durable powers of attorney, right? So you need one for financial and you need one for health.
Okay.
And then you're going to want to explore trust documents, right? So a trust document is like I said, it's a document and it
Yep.
just tells people what to do if you cannot tell them, right? So if you're
Yeah.
incapacitated or you're deceased, right? And so a trust can be considered a step up from a will. And I am by no stretch of the imagination an estate attorney. Uh,
Yeah.
no, this is not legal advice, right? I'm
Yep.
just sharing some financial education
Some
with you
tips.
guys.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. To look at the trust. And so a lot of people get confused. They're like, well, when do I get a will? When do I get a trust? And one piece, not the only piece, but one piece of very valuable information to make that determination
Hmm.
is if you own property.
Okay.
Is if you own property. So if you, I know we're at time. So if you own
Go ahead. Go
property,
ahead. Keep going.
that is when it is important to review a trust. Okay.
Wow.
So
Wow. That's
there's a
huge.
couple things. Like I was just talking to a client earlier, and he was saying something about having a trust for parents. And I mentioned, one really key point of having a trust is obviously to bypass probate. So for those who don't know,
Yeah.
probate
What's
is
that?
the legal process that takes place in every single state upon a person being deceased. So
Mm.
you don't want to go through probate, right? Because nobody wants to sign up for additional legal proceedings that they don't need to be a part of,
Gotcha.
right?
So that means the state and the legal system is trying to figure out what to do with your assets.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
So you want to avoid probate as much as you can. And easy
Gotcha.
ways to avoid probate are to apply beneficiaries onto accounts that will allow you to do so. So for
Hmm.
example, a lot of people don't know that you can put what's called a TOD or a transfer on death on your bank accounts.
Mm.
And why do you need that? You need that because if you don't have that, your bank accounts, unless they're joint accounts, have to go through probate
Wow.
in
A
order for your
COD.
heirs to
Okay.
get access to them.
Wow.
So that's what you don't want to have to do, right? When you can easily just apply somebody's name, social on there, and they can go and claim that account upon you being deceased.
So all you have to do is go to the bank and set up a TOD or transfer of death.
Yeah, you don't even have to go to the bank in most instances. A lot of times you can do it online.
Wow.
So you need that, right? And so that's just one account that you can apply beneficiaries on. Of course,
Hmm.
you can do it on all of your investment accounts, and you need to do that. Your life insurance. Anytime you can apply a beneficiary, you have to do
Yeah.
that because it allows you to bypass probate, which is a long, drawn out process that you're not going to want to have to deal with when you are in the middle of grieving, right? Or you don't want
Wow.
your loved ones to have to deal with that while they are also grieving your loss.
This is amazing. Wow, Jacqueline, you cover so much. We definitely gonna have to do a part two because I have so many more questions. Now, what do you have that's available right now? If somebody want to get in touch with you, how do they work with you? Give us a little bit more details on that.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or at my website. Everything is Jacqueline Plans. I think we'll go ahead and link it in the show notes, right?
Yes,
Make it
definitely.
clickable, easy for you guys to find. But yeah, you can contact me there. So I have an investment planning firm where I help people understand all of these pieces, right?
Hmm.
And everybody who comes into our ecosystem at my company, they have
Yeah.
to go through what I call a financial audit. And so a financial audit is very much like what I talked about today, where I tell you, hey, come in. I'm going
Yep.
to take inventory of your entire financial picture. So everything
Mhm.
from the budgeting to the investment accounts to the estate planning,
Mhm.
we can get your trust established if we need to do so. We take all of that into account. And then I come back to you with like, what is that number that you needed to save every month to get to retirement safely? So people
Gotcha.
can come in, they do this financial audit, and then I'm able to help point you in the right direction of anything else that you may need financially. And so you can reach me in that capacity. Of course, I'm always posting, dropping free
Yes.
gems online. So you can find
Yes.
all of that there.
That's fantastic. What is the last tip that you have that you can share with business owners? Like, what is the one tip that they should be doing right now to take care of their finances and really start looking at that budget discipline?
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to get into it. There's so much good stuff
I
beforehand.
know.
But the most important thing is understanding that as a business owner, you
Mhm,
can set up your entire business as a large corporation would. So
mhm.
sometimes we overlook that and we think of our business as a side hustle. And so it's important to understand that as a business owner, you can have your own 401k attached to your
Mhm.
company, right? So you can have your own solo 401k. There's other account types that are very similar to that, like a SEP, potentially simple deferred benefit plan if
Yeah.
your income calls for it. So you have all of these different opportunities to be saving that monthly number to get you to that financial freedom, right? That safety net number that you
Yeah.
need to be saving. So I would encourage everyone to take a hard look at that because again, $50 a month goes a very long way, especially in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things. So if you
For
are a new
30
business
years.
owner,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't know exactly how much you can put away. Like, let's start with something small, like 50 or $100, just to get something consistently going. And you can
Mhm.
do that through your own business, through your own solo 401k. That way, you're saving additional money on taxes and you have control of the investment. So
That's
that's the
amazing.
last tip I would leave them with.
Wow, Jacqueline, thank you again for sharing so much gems. We definitely got to have you come back for part two. I want to hear so much more information that I don't know that I'm sure a lot of our audience don't know. So, guys, check out Jacqueline, reach out to her. She can help you, her team can help you. Thanks again for jumping on. Appreciate you guys.
I appreciate you. Take care.